I often like to tell people that I don't care how old you are or what generation you're a part of, baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z. Collectively, we are all Gen T, the transition generation, which means that you need to prepare yourself to be in continual iteration mode.
It's important for you to understand that the age of AI is actually the age of relationship to yourself. Can you overcome your resistance? Can you overcome your fear? Can you adapt for yourself and for others? The key to solving the most interesting problems in the world is going to be about how you work with others. That is also the part that is more future-proofed.
Real AI mastery, real AI fluency doesn't come from just prompting a new kind of software. It's a behavioral shift. This is how we are going to work alongside what feels like a new kind of digital companion.
Every organization that is working on artificial intelligence can't work in a vacuum. It's not enough to learn a little bit about the technology. You have to think about how that technology impacts your organization, your industry, the world in which you operate. We all know that going forward, nobody's career will be static. Nobody is going to have the exact same job trajectory as might have existed in the past.
Many people are asking, will AI take my job? That question is relevant if you don't plan on doing anything.
Biologically, we are wired against change.
New things are always scary, and the headlines are not helpful. The helpful question is, how can I leverage AI to do this job or another job or the next job better?
In this class, I'm going to help you re-perceive your workflows in a world in which AI is both developing and developed enough so that you can already start using it.
You are going to walk away from this course with a new way of thinking about AI. And trust me, that's the key. How to make ourselves AI-proof in the workplace.
Looking at what will future-proof your career.
Thinking about the future differently and leaning into uncertainty with curiosity really is the best path forward.
I'm Connor Grennan.
I'm Nicole Bradford.
I'm Amy Webb. And this is Masterclass. I'm a quantitative futurist, CEO of Future Today Strategy Group, and a professor of strategic foresight at the New York University Stern School of Business.
I'm a New York Times bestselling author and chief AI architect at NYU Stern School of Business.
I've worked in emerging technologies for 20 years. I'm a co-founder of a venture fund, and I invest in human potential and technology.
As a futurist, my job is to, in some way, predict plausible futures, with the caveat that there is not going to be one definitive, singular future. I think the most important thing that futurists do, we remind people that you have agency in what comes next. The point is, you have to prepare and plan for it. This class is for somebody who already knows sort of the basics about artificial intelligence, but is not a programmer or a research scientist. It's that sweet spot of somebody who's ready to take a deeper dive.
It is about strategic relevance.
This is a new kind of relationship. How does this impact your job and help define the future of work?
Whether you're a brand new person in your company or the workforce, or you're a mid-career professional, you want to start by answering 3 simple questions. Where is the world going? Where will value be created? And how will I participate? So you become a futurist the same way you become an accountant, which is to say, you do a lot of learning, you study. I know people who are futurists, it sounds like very mysterious, very exciting, and ultimately at the end of the day, the work is serious and important. I studied economics and game theory in college, and I invented a methodology not too long after that that is rooted in data and modeling and really deep research that methodically pressure tests everything that we know about the present, looks for signals, qualifies long-term trends, and results in different plausible scenarios showing how things might play out. So look, I can assure you that even though we're not best friends yet, by the end of this, you will feel like this is time well spent. So we're going to start with a little exercise. I'd like for you to take a look at the image that you see right now on your screen. There's actually a picture within this image. See if you can figure out what the picture is. Once you see it, you're never going to be able to unsee it again. So ready? This is actually a picture of a cow. Here's the eyes, the mouth, and now here's the entire face, the head. Let's take that away. You can still see it, right? So this isn't just any cow. This is Dallenbach's cow. In the 1960s, there was an experimental psychologist named Karl Dallenbach. And what he was studying was, why is it that some people get confused when they're bombarded with signals and other people are able to cut through the noise to get to the information that matters most? So how do you determine what's a signal from what's the noise? A signal is an indication that some kind of change that's important, is afoot. So it turns out there's a reason why, when you're confronted with this image for the first time, you can't see what actually matters. And it's because the dark spaces, meaning what's obvious, that's what stands out to you. In this particular case, the signal that matters, that's the white spaces. So you need to be able to see both the white and the dark spaces to get a complete picture of what's happening. The problem is that our brains, they just throw out the white spaces. So we've just unlocked a superpower called reperception, and that is the ability to take all of the information that matters in a world where people might miss the important signals. Reperception has never been more important because right now you're being bombarded with information about artificial intelligence. We have to get really, really good at reperception, at taking the information that you're being presented with and pulling out the right bits so that you can have a much clearer, grounded view of what's actually happening in the present, and as a result, how the future might unfold. So look, some of you saw the cow right away. Great. That means that your brain might be more primed to look for signals and distinguish between, again, what is a signal and what's noise. But that's a very rare, tiny group of people. For the rest of us, myself included, you need a process. And that process is strategic foresight. It means you have to learn how to figure out, what are we going to prioritize and what actually has meaningful impact on the future. All right, friends, you have a homework assignment. Reperception is a critical skill, but it's especially important when you're thinking about the future of AI and technology in general. So here's what I want you to do. Every single day for the next 7 days, I want you to do something different. That's it. Notice if you're starting to break some of your other patterns and if you're starting to see the world a little differently as you start to build this new, critically important reperception skill.
I believe that AI is going to increase value of what I call essential human skills. The top 2 survival traits of the age of AI, adaptability and ideation, and the top 2 leadership traits are driving, learning, and change. ALIC, adaptability, learning, ideation, and change. Those are the keys. And so being the kind of person that can show up that way in an office, on a team, or the kind of person who can lead in that way. That takes essential human skills. I go into many companies and people feel like they're really behind and they're worried. And I tell them, don't be worried, because the out-of-the-box tools do not deliver ROI for companies, because it's just the same and everyone can use them the same. The real value is when it gets adapted. There are no experts on your culture, your customer, and your context, and AI. And so it might as well be you. What if this AI opportunity was not just an opportunity for reskilling, but if it was an opportunity for completely repositioning yourself and how you think about your role, but also how others perceive you? And so we're just at the beginning. We're going to be doing it for a really long time. So people who have the ability to be really useful and helpful for organizations to be able to do the transition are going to be very valuable. But since we're in a reposition anyway, you've never had a better opportunity to reimagine what it is you'd like to do.
I don't know about you, but one of the things I think about most is what AI means for my future job, my kids' future jobs, and the world at large. We really want to think strategically, and we want to think ahead. And believe it or not, there is no tool better for doing that than AI. And it does it in a way that makes us feel empowered and not afraid. AI can be used in really any field, but what that means is that it is on you to try to figure out what it looks like to be using AI in your job. And guess what? Nobody's going to tell you that. This is for you to figure out. Why? Because you know your job better than anyone, better than your boss, better than your colleagues, anyone. Your leadership does not know the future of your job. Leadership is looking for people like you who are going to use AI alongside what they do. So when you use AI to help augment what you do, you are essentially going to be creating a new way of working alongside AI, and that is what the future of work is going to feel like. So how do we get a sense of how AI is going to impact our job, your job in particular? Well, I'm going to show you a super cool demo on how to do that. What I'm going to show you now is how we're going to audit our own job and essentially our own career to figure out how AI is going to integrate into it and how to make ourselves AI-proof in the workplace. So to do that, I actually want to build a custom GPT. As you know, in a previous masterclass, you already learned how to build a GPT. So you already know how to do this, but what I'm going to do is show you the inside of this GPT that I built. This one's called AI Task Augmentation Analyst. These instructions may look pretty complex. They're really not. They're just a way of helping define what we want this GPT to do. This is just the format the GPT understands best. Anybody can create this. And by the way, we're going to get you access to this, so don't even worry about it. First, I want you to create this Google Sheets document that we'll call our AI Wins dashboard. Open Google Sheets and type in job title into column A, time saved, hours and week, into column B, quality delta, 30% plus improvement, into column C, and next pilot, task or process to try AI with next, into column D, like you see here. Now let's walk through creating this GPT so you can see how I got here. Go to my GPTs and click the plus create button and switch to the configure tab. Then pause and copy these GPT instructions shown here, which are also in your PDF, into each corresponding field to follow along. For example, name it AI Task Augmentation Analyst. Add the description, then type in the instructions. But essentially what this GPT is going to do is it's going to analyze job descriptions, and it's going to use a publicly available data set by the government called ONIT, which talks about what jobs are out there, what skills are required in those jobs. And it's going to then look at my job description, and it's going to tell me where AI might be able to take over, where the human element is probably going to stay intact, and everything in the middle. Now put in each of the 4 conversation starters into the rows you see here. In the knowledge section, upload the AI Wins dashboard document we made earlier, and make sure under capabilities that everything is checked off. Then hit create to make the GPT. So I'm going to drag and drop a very sort of generic business analyst job description. It already has it in here. In your case, you would upload your specific job description so it can analyze the tasks in your role. And I'm not even going to ask it anything. I'm just going to hit go on it because it already has the prompt. To analyze this, I'll map out its key responsibilities to ONET tasks, estimate time allocations, evaluate this, and populate it. So essentially now it's doing a breakdown. It's telling you what the task is. It's giving you the estimated time allocation about how much time you spend on that during the day. And then critically, the AI augmentation potential. So the quality impact, here's the category. Do you want to augment or do you want to make it human-led? The automation risk, is it medium, low, or high? And strategic moat. What is the strategic moat? That gives you a sense of how much of this will still need to be human-led going forward. So here's what we see at the end. We get a little dashboard summary, estimated time saved if you're using AI, about 45% of total time, and it tells you which tasks, the key quality gains, reduced errors in reporting and documentation. Now it's going to ask me if I want more things and produce more documents, etc. But the thing I really want to point out here is that what this has done is it's broken down your tasks and given you a sense of which ones you should focus on. One of the most critical things that AI does is not just summarize a large document. It goes in and it answers the question of what you're looking for. In this case, what we are looking for are the tasks in our job and which ones we should be really focused on to let go and start automating with AI, and which ones we should lean into as humans. So right in here, we can go in and say, okay, but give me real talk. Where do you think I should be spending my time and energy? Remember, this is not just a data processing machine. You want to start with getting the analysis. That's a great starting point. But after that, you can just talk to it like a strategically brilliant friend that only wants the best for you to help you out. So here's the real talk. Top 3 focus areas for immediate impact. Automate these things. AI-powered documentation and training. Proactive process improvement. So I might say something like this. I'm really actually panicked about losing my job to AI. Tell me how I can impress my leadership with re-evaluating this role and how I can make it more AI-focused while still keeping me highly relevant. Do you see what I'm asking it here? I'm actually asking for the question that I need answered. What should I tell my boss right now? This is not just about getting facts. This is about getting answers that you need to change how you are going to work going forward. Totally hear you, and you're not alone. That anxiety is real, but here's the upside. You're strategically thinking before the change happens, which is really what this class is all about. Here's something you can say to your boss. I've identified 40 to 50% of my tasks that can be streamlined. Having spoken to tons and tons of leaders, this is what they want to hear. They want to hear everybody come to them and say, here's how I'm using AI to augment what I do, and here's how my role should be changed. Be proactive. Don't let them tell you that AI is automating you out of a job. Say how AI is going to partner with you to become something that they have never seen before and define the future of work, starting with your role. Once you give AI the context of your job or let it audit your role, here are some follow-ups. Which tasks need human judgment versus just processing? Where do I add relationship value that can't be automated? What problems do I solve that require human creativity? How do I become AI's most valuable partner? Once you've done this audit, it's natural to feel some uncertainty about what's next. Amy is going to help you think carefully about your decisions moving forward.
Right now, If you're feeling anxious about the future, that is the correct feeling to have. We are all living through a soul-crushing amount of deep uncertainty in a way that, quite honestly, no generation has had to live through before us. And I know, some of you are going to be saying, every generation has said ours is the worst. But if you look at the facts, that's actually true. We are living through a period of unprecedented change. The role of somebody like me, a professional futurist, is to transform the FOMO, the fear of missing out that you're feeling, or the FOMA, the fear of missing anything, to a much more practical sort of third-party observer. Yes, there's change happening. There's a lot that I can't personally control, but I'm also going to take a very pragmatic approach to taking in all of the signals that I see, to thinking about their next order impacts, and to take a practical stance on planning for the future. And the problem is that when we're struggling with FOMO or FOMA, we tend to make really weird decisions that we may not have made in other circumstances. So let me tell you a little story about what happens when you don't have a plan and you're not thinking clearly about the future, and instead you're struggling with, FOMA or FOMO or both. This story takes us back in time to a tiny town in West Virginia. One of the things that West Virginia is most known for, and the reason a lot of people are there, is because West Virginia was the place where America's first coal mines were built. Now, for a long time, coal was the thing that powered the most impressive and important technological innovation that existed, and that was the steam engine. Over time, you wound up with generations of people who were skilled workers, who had deep knowledge that they passed down from generation to generation. You couldn't go to school to learn how to become a coal miner. You just had to be in that space and part of that culture and part of that group of people who were all invested in this industry. A couple hundred years go by. We're not as reliant on the steam engine, and we're really not, as a culture, as reliant on coal as we used to be. So what wound up happening was that a lot of those coal mines closed. And as those mines were closing, other industries weren't moving in, which meant that within a relatively short amount of time, lots and lots of people lost their jobs. So in the middle of this change, somebody thought, let's come up with a way to help out these coal miners. All of this change, all of this economic turmoil, and because there was no plan, coal just wasn't as important as it was in the past. And at the same time, we've got mobile phones, we have apps. So this created a perfect storm of, we've got to do something right away. So the big solution to the problem in West Virginia was to teach all of these coal miners how to code. That's right. They had people who were skilled workers, who had very specialized skills, right, that had been honed and developed over generations. They're going to take these highly skilled people and have them sit in front of a computer for 8 hours a day and learn HTML. Now, a couple problems with this. First of all, if you go back in time, 2015, 2016, when this Teach the Coal Miners How to Code thing popped up, anybody who was paying attention to AI back then would have told you that HTML is probably not the right thing to teach. There were lots of other types of programming skills that they should have focused on instead, because at that point, HTML, that was largely automated. But the second thing was, what a ridiculous waste of skills. This was a group of people that could have transferred easily into other industries if West Virginia had just planned ahead and incentivized companies from other places to come in and make use of that workforce. So it should not surprise you to learn that this Teach Coal Miners to Code thing, it lasted for 2 years. The whole thing folded. And in fact, everybody was left off worse than where they started. Anybody could have told you that that was implausible. But the hype, the excitement, the lack of a plan led everybody to want to believe that this would become the future. So you've got to be really careful about fear of missing out, about anxiety, about change. You have to be clear-eyed and be willing to go into things with a plan so that you're not making weird choices and decisions that in other circumstances you just wouldn't have made.
Many people don't realize that we are in the first inning. We're at the very beginning of this. Generative AI, the most recent chapter, it is brand new. We're at a place where we understand that there's different tools that are better for different tasks, different ways of using the technology depending on your goals. AI, as it's described, is sort of this big bucket of AI, but it's actually many, many, many things. So for individual work, I judge things based on 3 things. The first is, how fast do I need it? The second is, how complex is it? And the third is, how important it is to me. For things that are fast, of course, you just do it with AI and get it done. For things that are complex, it's important to be able to break things down and divide by platform. And then the last part, which is really the core, is whether or not it's important to you. Many people are saying, ChatGPT just writes everything, so why should I ever write again? But writing is a form of thinking. And so for deep work, where you want to really develop your point of view and develop your authority, it is important to write first. Sometimes what I do is, if I have an idea for an article, I'll use voice mode and just speak. But I will specifically tell AI, don't be creative, just outline what I said to you. And then I'll get the outline. And then I'll look at it from a logic standpoint. And I might ask AI to do a logic check of the structure of the outline. But then I close all the windows and I write myself. The reason why this is important is because in an age where the floor of competency is rising, that's what's exciting about AI. The floor of competency is rising for everyone. In an age like this, what's going to really make you stand out is taste, your taste. And if you haven't done the thinking, if you haven't done the deep work, if you lose that ability to have a voice of authority because you've thought deeply about something, then you lose taste. And that puts you in the people pile. The people pile is where there's 5,000 resumes and yours doesn't break through. So with AI, you must defend your taste. Being a really great collaborator, being able to work with other people, those behaviors, those are the ones that actually allow you to ride the wave. Tracking tasks and even tracking skills puts us in comparison to machines. And that doesn't allow us to focus on what's actually helpful to us and also what is transferable and future-proofed, which is the way that you think about things, the way you approach problems, and the way that you approach the people that you solve problems with. How adaptable are you? Are you able to leave the old market behind? How much do you learn? Can you prototype quickly? How much do you ideate? And do you empower your own change and the change of everyone around you? One of the things that's in the headlines right now is the volume of AI-generated resumes and also how companies are using AI to screen candidates. And you probably have also heard about people who have submitted thousands of resumes and they haven't heard back from anyone. And it's really kind of heartbreaking, but I want to dig into what's happening behind the scenes with that. The company started it by using AI to go through resumes. And then with ChatGPT and the democratization of these tools, finally candidates had the ability to do the exact same thing. And so candidates are using ChatGPT and other LLMs to create cover letters, to tailor the resume specifically for the job, the things that we've always been told we should do in order to stand out and get out of the people pile. So because the volume's gone up, there are companies that for a single role where they might have gotten 500, 700 resumes, they're getting 10,000. And they can't get back to everyone. They can't get through it. So what they're doing is they're putting nonsense words or nonsense responsibilities into the job description. And so if someone is mindlessly using a program or an agent that they built where it just scans and sends, then the word comes up. The funniest one I've heard is someone actually put the word Jabberwocky, the name of that old movie, into the job description. And sure enough, cover letters are coming back with people saying that they can Jabberwocky better than the best of them. And so this is a sure sign. It gets you automatically put in not just the people pile, but the no, not ever pile. So it goes back to that standard of let AI be your co-pilot, but not the driver. And so you have to check your work. Even before AI was used in recruiting and hiring, 84% of the job market is hidden. People know what you do. They know who you are and they recommend you. Or it's a friend or a neighbor. The question is, how do you differentiate yourself? And now that the volume is going up and AI is doing that, getting out of the people pile is going to be about having gone that extra step. You know, you can go the extra mile, do the thinking, try on the job before you have the job. Designers are starting to do this, where they design marketing campaigns for brands that they'd like to work with, and they put it on social. You know, even before you have an ask, before you're looking, if I know that person X is probably challenged by A, B, or C, when I see articles or research studies that would be useful in how they think about it, I can send those to them online, you know, via LinkedIn. Right now, hiring has slowed. Some people are saying it's because of AI, and that certainly plays a role, but in general, it's just also caution right now in our current economic climate. But ultimately, companies need to operate, and building the relationships, the thought leadership, and the problem solving and the thinking before you make the transition allows you to be the person that someone thinks of when the role opens up.
So let's talk about where signals come from. Signals come from all different areas, and sometimes when you're thinking about the future, you actually have to pay attention to signals that have nothing at all to do with the thing that you're focused on. This is the easy way to get started. To take a very broad view of everything, to look for information from different sources, and to let that inform how you're thinking about the future. So for example, you're interested in artificial intelligence. It's good to pay attention to what you're seeing in the news or what you might be reading in social media. But if it was me, and it is me, I'd love for you to go a little bit broader and to start paying attention to related things from, say, healthcare. Like what's happening in healthcare that might be related to AI, even if you don't work in healthcare. How do you figure out what's a signal? So once you've gone really broad and you've found new sources of information, what do you do with it? How do you identify a signal for that? Well, you're going to look for three basic things. You're going to look for a contradiction and inflection and a change in practice. A contradiction is a signal that demonstrates opposing forces. An inflection is a signal that demonstrates an inflection point, a moment of significant velocity. 10 companies just got a ton of funding, and they're all kind of doing the same thing. Or it seems like 50 people have filed patents all roughly about the same things. These are weird inflection points that, again, tell you that change is coming around the corner. Finally, there's a change in practice, which represents a big change in how things have always been done. So look, you're a smart person. You're reading the New York Times, going to the Wall Street Journal, you're international, you're reading The Guardian, you're listening to NPR. You're already doing all of the right things. Why should you need to go beyond those trusted sources of news? Well, the reason is because by the time you're reading about something in the newspaper, that signal is kind of old. You actually want to get to the original source of the information as soon as it's happening. You can spend a little bit of time on the Patent and Trademark Database. It's pretty easy to use. And look up different keywords and terms related to artificial intelligence or really anything else. What you're looking for is occasions where you're seeing new patterns. Why is it that in the past 3 months, a whole bunch of people are talking about computer vision? I don't know what that is, but I see those words coming up over and over again. Maybe that's a signal to you that you should go do a little bit of research because suddenly everybody's talking about it. Another place that I look, and you should too, is called Archive, spelled ARXIV. Now, this is a pre-print, pre-publication academic server at Cornell. These are papers before they get printed in journals of all the latest research. It's not the most interesting stuff to read, I'll be the first to tell you. Look at the abstract, the first paragraph or two, which is a short narrative that describes everything else that's in the paper. And again, you're looking for patterns. Are you seeing the same things come up over and over again? And if so, do they represent a contradiction, and inflection, or a change in practice?
I grew up in Houston, Texas, and there's hurricanes often. Having a house on high ground is a good thing to do. You know that old saying, if the creek don't rise. Well, the creek is rising. That is what's happening. So where is the high ground? What are the approaches, skills, and abilities that are valuable in any context, any climate? And so that's what high ground is. So on one part, it's your ability to work with yourself. The second part is your ability to work with others. And the third part is also your ability to work with machines and the way that you work with AI. And so high ground is a combination of those three things. One way to think about AI is that pre-AI, you might have been a clarinet player or a violinist or a cellist in an orchestra. AI makes you the conductor. You are the conductor, and you are playing the various instruments. You can set up a GPT to play every role on a team. So the concept of orchestration in the age of AI is the ability to be that conductor and to know that you want to hear more of the brass or that it's time for the piano to come in and to have that taste that allows you to create the symphony. And so if you have the ability to orchestrate machines and to orchestrate people, you will always have a role. And this is why trust is so important and domain expertise, because when a company is really serious about an AI transformation, the people who know how the work gets done are the people doing the work. Because the CEOs, they haven't done the work in a decade or more. And so the people with the domain expertise, the nurses in the oncology department, the teachers with the special need kids, they actually know how the work gets done. And so they're the ones who have to tell the organization how to change the workflows. And if they don't trust you, then they won't do it. To be irreplaceable in the age of AI is being a person who can start building trust the moment you walk into the room.
Listen, I know paying for subscriptions, we're all paying for a million of them. This is where you should be investing your money. If you are just using the free version of AI tools, I really want to caution you because this is where we have to protect our privacy. This is where we want to get the best results out of AI. And this, especially when it can see, when it can hear, when it can interact with the work that you're interacting with, you're going to actually really start feeling that you have a digital companion alongside of you. This is not like learning a typical tool. This is really a mindset shift of how you're going to get into the mode of turning to ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, any one of a number of tools for advice, whether it's at home, whether it's at work. What would I do if I could instantly get answers I was never used to being able to get before? Things that you spent time on, things you never even wanted to approach before. All of a sudden, you can do that with AI. That's what gets you thinking strategically. It's a whole new way of thinking. One of the absolute best uses for AI is using voice and vision. This is the way that you really start treating it like a companion and not just like something you're typing into. So I have the Gemini app on my iPhone, and what I'm going to do is click on the live button, and all of a sudden it pops up ready to talk. Hey, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you loud and clear. How's it going?
It's going really well, thanks. And so what we're going to do here is I am going to show a problem that I'm having, and Gemini is going to walk through it. So I'm just going to hit the recorder so it can see what I see. So Gemini, I'm going to ask you for some help here. I can't get my printer to work, so I'm just going to show you on the screen the error message that I'm getting. Can you see that?
Okay, I see the error message. It says, failed to open a connection to the device. Let's try a few things.
Well, let me ask you this first, because I can always interrupt you. Let me show you the printer that I'm dealing with here. It's over here. Can you see the printer I'm using right now?
Okay, I see the HP Envy Pro 6455. That's a wireless printer, so let's make sure it's connected to your Wi-Fi properly. Sometimes, even if it seems connected, it might need a little nudge. Try turning it off and on again. While that's happening, we can double check the Wi-Fi connection on your Mac Studio, just to be safe.
Okay, any other steps that I should take? Just kind of take us forward a little bit.
Okay, let's try this. On your Mac, go to System Settings, then Printers and Scanners. See if your HP Envy Pro 6455 is listed there. If it is, remove it and then add it back.
You see how Gemini is doing the work? It might not be perfect, but it's going to get me there 90% of the time. This approach to problem solving is everything, because now it's finally really acting like a companion. It's almost literally like acting like somebody on the other end of the phone. That is absolutely game-changing for how you're going to do your work going forward. Think about the way you use your phone at work all the time to take photos of things, to remember things, taking photos of handwritten notes, whiteboards, etc. But we can go beyond that with Gemini. Because it has vision, it's going to actually help me process, not just collect the information. Here's what I mean. Hey Gemini, I have these handwritten notes that were taken to my colleague, so I'm just going to show you what these notes look like. Can you take a look at these notes and actually put them in some kind of working order for me so I understand what they're actually saying?
Okay, I can help with that. It looks like you're working on a project with several phases. The notes mention defining project contractors, confirming engineering timelines, and considering modular design for future scalability. Is that right?
Yeah, that's perfect. And now Gemini, what I really want you to do is give me some to-dos for this, see if there's any action items in there, and then I really want you to think strategically, but I'll give you that prompt in a second.
Okay, let's get those to-dos in order. First, you'll want to define the project's contractors and confirm the engineering team's timeline, keeping their dependencies in mind. Next, you can check if the budget for external contractors is appropriate. Then, focus on the core MVP features for the initial launch and start finalizing those specs. You'll also want to begin your sprint and user testing. Finally, think about how to allow for future scalability with a modular design. Does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah, that sounds great. So what sort of steps can you start carrying out for me right now? I don't want you just reading these notes, Gemini. I want you to act like a strategy guy and really help me think through what you think I should do as a first step.
Sure. First, let's look at your Venn diagram. It shows the sweet spot for a successful launch is where user needs and business goals overlap. So to start, you could list your assumptions about both user needs and business goals. Then, think about how to test those assumptions.
I'm going to pause it there because you're getting the idea of what we're getting at here. The most important thing is not just that you have a note taker or something that can take handwritten notes and put them in good working order. This is also your chief strategy officer. This is not just about processing information, this is about acting on it. And I could have had it play any role, a marketer, a strategy person, an ops person. This is my teammate, and it's 100 different teammates all in one. This is where we see the big shift. I'm at my desk right now, but this is something I could take with me everywhere. You have this in your pocket. You can pick up and leave off conversations wherever you want. It totally feels different from how large language models have worked in the past. Real-time observation is just one example of how we can use data and evidence to imagine what might lie ahead and what's already unfolding.
So, as a futurist, my job is to imagine as many plausible data-backed futures as I possibly can so that we're prepared. That's what a futurist does. Now, there's an easier way to explain this, and it has to do with a car. So you get in your car, you type in your destination. This is where I want to go. It's a point and a destination in the future. And that system will give you, based on what we know today, this moment in time, exactly right now, the best possible path to get there. Okay, so you get in your car, you start driving. I'm trying to get to this place in the future. This is the current path that I'm going to take. But there's any number of things along the way that might go wrong and force you to take a different route. Things you cannot know in the present, right? So somebody gets into an accident, some mattress that somebody kind of halfway attached to the roof of their car flips off. This happens more than you would imagine. All different types of things that we cannot know right now that impact the direction that we'll take and the outcomes as we head into that future, right? So we know we're going from point A to point B, but the way that we get there, what might happen along the way, there's no way to know that right now. So that's kind of the way you have to think about getting to the future. There's different scenarios to get there. We're trying to get from point A to point B, but what that point B looks like exactly and the various different ways we'll take possibly to get there, we don't know yet. We can map out different plausible scenarios, plausible stories, but we have to be adaptive and willing to change as new information comes to light. So especially when it comes to AI, I think everybody is looking for AI trends. And it's good to know what the trends are, right? You want to have some indication of where the world is heading, and trends, when they're built properly, those indicate what we can know today. The problem is the world is full of uncertainty, and there's just lots of things over which no one entity has total control. Everything from climate change to macroeconomics, to the capricious attitudes of teenagers and the latest trend on TikTok. Those are called uncertainties. And uncertainties are a critical part of both strategic foresight and thinking about the future of AI. So what you want to do is combine what we can know, those are trends in artificial intelligence, and what we can't know, those are uncertainties. Those two together help form the foundation for scenarios. These are short narratives that help us explore possible futures. One of the things that leaders and organizations need to do now is to build scenarios that contemplate where the future is headed and where value will be created and how that organization is going to participate using AI in some capacity. Here's how you think about uncertainties. You can make yourself a quick list, and usually it's a binary or an opposite. So for example, the economy will grow, the economy will shrink. There'll be more wildfires in Texas or fewer. That's kind of important because there's a lot of data centers in Texas, and you need a data center in order to use AI. People will become more or less religious. So you actually want to create for yourself a list of those uncertainties and go as broad as you possibly can, because when you use uncertainties along with trends, they help you get a much clearer picture of what the future might look like. Scenario planning is much a science as it is an art. It requires rigorous work, a lot of training, a lot of data, a team to do it. So while that is very important, not every company has a team of futurists at its disposal. So there's another thing that you can do instead, and that is to get into a scenarios headspace or mindset. And that's a matter of asking, what if? So what if A, B, and C might happen? How does the future look differently than it does today? And that's something that anybody inside of any organization can do. Right now, there are lots of artificial intelligence tools in the form of a chatbot interface. And you could use that interface to do lots of different things. So you could start asking the question, what if our organization uses that interface for customer experience, right? Or any number of different things. Then you can ask, well, what if our competitor does the same thing and maybe we don't? Or what if some company that we've never heard of before or some person working out of their house invents an entirely new system that takes advantage of these tools? What does that mean? And you keep asking those what if questions over and over and over again because it helps you see alternative paths to the future. When it comes to artificial intelligence, I don't care what you're hearing. There's no singular prediction that's right. There we go. I've ripped off the Band-Aid. Now you can feel more comfortable. It's just not possible. That's fine. The goal right now is not to predict the exact outcome of artificial intelligence. And by the way, how could we possibly do that with so much development taking place? Instead, the better thing to do is learn what you can, use data to create scenarios, either using a methodology and a team, or by asking what if, and seeing different possible permutations of the future. Because the point of all of this, and honestly of being a futurist, is to be prepared for anything rather than being prepared for exactly everything.
One of the best things large language models do is imitate human behavior. Now, that's interesting, but how do we extrapolate that? Well, think about it. What do we have to do at work, no matter if you have a big job or a small job? We're always trying to get feedback. This is what AI does so unbelievably well. It allows you to create what I like to call an infinite focus group. You can do this all day long and absolutely change how you work because all of a sudden, you can get a broad range of opinions, instant feedback, and that is going to set you up so well for working with the real humans in your office. And like scenario planning, this helps you use AI to prepare for any outcome. One of my favorite things about doing a process like this is it just uncovers blind spots. It uncovers friction points that you can't possibly come up with before you would do it in real life. In other words, if you're going to walk into a meeting, it's very hard to predict how people would react. You can guess, but this gives you a systematic way of dealing with that. It's something you can do over and over and over again and get results that are good enough to stress test before you go out to your colleagues. These large language models understand how to create tons and tons of different personas. And those personas are going to give you feedback that really simulates the human that would have those same characteristics. It's amazing. And that will prepare you for going into those real meetings. So in this lesson, we are going to be combining different large language models. Why? Because different large language models tend to do different things well. This is what the difference is between a beginner and an intermediate. Moving this from a tool really into a companion, or in this case, an infinite set of companions that can give you amazing feedback in real time. Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, they do different things well, and I want to try to point out what those things are. So what we have here is our internal announcement memorandum about hybrid work. Obviously, always a tricky topic. That's going to be the document that I'm going to be using with Gemini right now. So here's how I would do this. I'm just going to put the prompt in. And I say, hey, I've got this internal memo for my company that I have to roll out to tell people we're going to have to come back to work, and I need to message it well to a lot of different kinds of stakeholders. Can you help me by creating a focus group that I can test it with? I might want to give it a little extra context. I work in insurance. Create 15 personas. Give me their name, department, tenure at the company, sentiment to hybrid work, maybe from a survey, and note that we're in New York City. So more often than not, junior people need a place to escape their apartments. More senior folks like to avoid the commute. And here's the critical thing. I say create a table. This is me creating an infinite focus group. Gemini comes back with to create a robust focus group. It's designed a set of 15 personas to represent a cross-section of your company's workforce. They're diverse, etc. And then as you see, the New York City context with the unique housing and commuting challenges has been incorporated. Do you see the power of this? Essentially what we're talking about is this is creating entirely new personas that we can have react to our memo. The reason I use Gemini for this task is I love its ability to easily export to Sheets. I'm going to create that right now because if you work in Google, you work in a Google Workspace, this is a great way to do it. If you work in Microsoft, maybe you want to use Copilot. But I'm going to hit Export to Sheets because it's going to create a spreadsheet for me. Right now, I'm going to hit Open Sheets. What we have is a set of 15 different individuals, all fictional, but with names, departments, tenures, sentiment to hybrid work, and actual notes about them, because this is what you would know if you worked in the company. Gemini has created this, and now we can really start messing with this data, using it to create the best work product possible. I like to mix it up with language models just to make sure I'm getting a good variety of answers, and I love ChatGPT for this reason, for analyzing this kind of information. The first thing I'm going to put in is my prompt. Hey, I have this new memo. I have to send it out to my company, so I'm going to give you the memo, ChatGPT. Give me a sense of how you think, let's just call it the first 3 people so we're not here all day. Make sure you pull it from the sheet. Try to get into their heads. Tell me what they're thinking based on the little you know. And I'm going to just drag and drop 2 different documents. The first document is that internal memo that I flashed up before. That's the real memo I want to send out to the company. And the second is that fictional spreadsheet that I just created, and I'm just going to hit go. I've read the internal memo and the employee sheet. Now here's the thing. What it didn't do was actually pull from the sheet. So sometimes you have to actually really make sure it understands your commands. Sometimes you have to tell it more than once. You'll run into this a lot. Hey, remember I asked you to pull from that sheet! Exclamation points. Don't make up your own. Simple as that. You're absolutely right. Thanks for the nudge. I'll do it properly this time. So it says, thanks for your patience now that I've pulled directly from the spreadsheet. And then it gives me a sense of their likely reaction based on their sentiment, based on who they are, their tenure, etc. Again, this is not perfect. What we're seeing here instead is a basic proxy for how people might react. So this is extremely helpful for getting into the heads of people you might not normally be able to get into the heads of. So what I want to say now is, thanks, this is great, but now I need a personalized Slack message for each of these individuals to send before the memos go out. So now what I'm doing is clustering all of these reactions to get a sense of how I can break them out and personalize each one. So instead of just getting a memo that comes out faceless, not taking into consideration what that individual is most concerned about, ChatGPT is going to give me the opportunity to do that. Do you see the power of what we're doing here? With all these tools, we can personalize very quickly just by giving it context about the individual. There's almost nothing more powerful that we can do with a large language model than personalization. By the way, don't forget, the first answer AI gave me was not what I was looking for. Don't be afraid to keep on saying over and over again, that's not what I was asking for. That's not what I was looking for. Give me this in a new way. Believe me, this has no ego. You can keep on asking it. You can keep on doing it until you get it right. That's the iterative process that's so different from just putting in a prompt and hoping for the best. When could you have just snapped your fingers and got in the room 15 different kinds of people representing all kinds of different demographics to get their take on something without any ego right before you walk into a meeting? It's impossible. This is something that you can now do. If you are in leadership, you have a responsibility to start thinking about what the future of work looks like. And when you get a sense of what your people are doing now and what tasks AI can take on, this is an incredible opportunity to give your people the real tasks that only humans can do and offload everything else to AI. That's what restructuring looks like for leaders.
For managers to build AI readiness, the number one thing is fluency. You have to get the fluency up. If people haven't used it, they can't imagine what it can do, and they can't imagine what it can't do. If they don't know what it can't do, then they're very afraid of it. And if they don't know what it can do, then they're not really inspired to use it. And so the first thing a manager has to do is to get the fluency up. So that might mean Friday hackathons, creating a bounty, extra money for someone who came up with the thing that saved the company the most money. Get the fluency up and motivate people to experiment with it. That's just number one. That's table stakes. The second thing, once you raise the fluency, is you have to set the cultural aspects around it. There's been several CEOs who have come out and said, if you cannot prove that AI can't be used for this job, you can't have the headcount. And that might sound harsh, but what it does is it communicates to the entire organization that AI is expected and needed and wanted in the organization. And that's important because there was just a Harvard Business Review study on what they're calling the AI paradox, where people who use AI and tell people that they're using AI are judged more harshly than when people don't. And so as a manager, when you get past the basic fluency, you have to culturally make it okay for people to use it, and you have to encourage people to do it. And then the third part is what you're communicating about it. It doesn't work to say we will never fire anyone because employees don't trust it. But you can say, we're going on a journey. We would like you to come with us. We need your help. We don't know exactly where this will take us. But if you experiment with us, there can be a place for you. And so you have to get the comms right. And then the last part of it is that, in those comms is actually following up with real planning for people. And this is where we go back to the skills gap analysis, really going to them and saying, we're looking at your job. This set of things that you do, we know can be done by AI. We know it's coming. What's on your wish list? Here's our wish list. And working with them to plan their own transition. And that's good for the business and it's good for the employee. This age, more than any other, is about relationship. And that's one of the key things that I want you to understand from this class.
So there's a concept in artificial intelligence known as human in the loop. And basically what that means is we have systems built to make decisions on their own, but a human is somehow involved in either the supervisory process or just before a final decision results in a deployment of something, there's a human person checking things and how they work. Now, it's still pretty important to have a human in the loop because as systems are being built to learn from us and make decisions on their own, they get stuff wrong. That's not unusual. We humans get things wrong too. But it's useful to have some type of check and balance just to make sure that as systems are being trained and as they are learning and improving, that there's still some involvement.
What's so challenging about a hallucination is that it essentially totally sounds accurate. It will speak so unbelievably confident about a book that an author never wrote, for example. And every once in a while, that can go off the rails. That's something we have to look out for. We have to remember that your judgment is ultimately the most effective way of getting great quality. The problem with AI sometimes is that it doesn't know what good quality looks like. You do. There's this whole expression, keep a human in the loop. You are the arbiter of good information. You are the person ultimately responsible for your output. Use your judgment. The intermediate user doesn't trust everything they see that comes out of AI. The intermediate user really understands what a hallucination looks like and how to weed it out. We have to remember that when they're giving you information, they're not going to the library or a database and pulling that information directly for you. Essentially, what it's doing is it has learned how people talk on the internet. It's read probably 1 trillion words. It knows how words are put together, and it's answering you based on that context. So it knows statistically what the next word should be. If you say the apple, it may be the Apple CEO or the apple pie or the apple tree. It's probably not going to say the Apple light bulb. That's statistics. Please remember, if you remember nothing else, critically, that AI can make mistakes. And when you need something to be accurate, you better check that yourself. In the same way you would with a person, where did you get these sources? How did you unearth this information? What assumptions are you making? You're responsible for that. Chain of thought is an unbelievably powerful way to work with AI, and really all it means is that you're asking AI to show its work. It's so powerful in helping you understand what assumptions are being made. Again, consider if you were asking your colleague for this, you might say, well, where were you getting that information from? What assumptions sort of should you have made that you didn't make? And also, where may you have gone wrong in your chain of thought thinking? When you can open that black box, you can really understand where it got its information, and that's critical for a great final output. So let's get into how to use chain of thought prompting. I'm going to use Claude to evaluate a big problem that I have, a huge strategic decision. So here's what we're going to enter right now. So I'm saying, hey, I'm thinking about getting into the AI-powered HR solutions business. Can you tell me about the current market and where VC funding is going right now? Clearly a big, big issue that we want to be dealing with. So let's just hit go on that and see where we land. I can actually see what search results it's looking at. That's the first thing. We want to make sure that it's pulling from sources that we trust. The second thing that you see Claude doing is let me search for recent VC trends, as you saw that I asked that. Once again, we can peek in here and see where it's drawing its information from. That's critical. And then what Claude is going to do is it's actually going to give me my answer. So it says, based on my research, here's a comprehensive overview of the market. It goes through and cites sources. It's showing a really structured breakdown of this analysis, which is critical because I asked it a robust question and it's giving me a robust answer. And then you see it concludes with the market is clearly in a high growth phase. So it's essentially giving me a conclusion as to sort of like what I should do here. But this is where things get interesting. What's behind this answer? And when it sounds this professional, it can really dissuade us from doing any deeper dives into this. But during the deeper dive is really how you move into the progression of getting really, really great at working with AI. I'm going to say, hold on, what are the key assumptions behind that analysis? And where might you be wrong? It says, you're right to push back. How great is that? So it says, let's examine the key assumptions and potential flaws in my analysis. So first it goes into maybe the market size projections are a little off. Maybe the VC funding won't continue at a current pace. Then it goes into where I, meaning Claude, might be wrong. And you'll see how organized all this is. It's now giving me a slightly different conclusion based on a closer look. So as you see down here, a more realistic view might be the market will grow, but more slowly, a few players will deliver real value, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what's so critical about what we're doing right now? We know what hallucinations are. They are things that look like facts, but are just a little off. The beginner will look at this and say, well, did it pull from a fake source? Is that fact incorrect? But that's not what we do. The way we look at this is, yes, those facts are correct, but are they relevant to the question that I'm asking? And is it pulling the correct facts, not just making sure the facts are correct? So the next thing we want to do is really make sure that this is the information we want. Were there any out-of-date studies or stats that you looked at that you might want to remove? And how would that change your calculation? Again, this is not about whether it got incorrect information, it's whether we're using the best information. Claude is now reevaluating, it's going back, right? It said, excellent point. These are outdated sources to remove. 2 years old in a really fast-changing market, that matters. What about pre-generative AI statistics? Those almost matter not at all. So you see how realistic and how perfect that initial answer was, but as we dig just a little bit deeper, we're finding flaws in that, things that were launched in 2018. And then it tells us, how does this change my analysis? So the actual reality, looking at this, and then it starts giving me all the information I really need. Do you see what's happening here? Most importantly, Claude is changing its answer very quickly with just a few easy prompts, with me pushing it to reevaluate if we're using the right work. This isn't about a hallucination and getting the wrong answer. It's about making sure that we're including the best information. Okay, we're ready for the final answer. Here we go. This is helpful, I say, but I need to make a final decision. Of all those risks and assumptions, which ones would kill my business if I got them wrong, and how would I test them quickly? And now it's giving me the question I'm really trying to get to, which is, what can I not get wrong? So again, this is what comes from chain of thought thinking. You can go through it, you can crack it open to sort of see what the assumptions it's made are. It gives me a new framework, it gives me a recommendation, and in the end, it gives me a brutal truth. If you can't validate paid demand in 6 weeks, you're likely too early or testing the wrong problem. That's what I love about Claude. In the end, it's going to tell me what I need to know. So if Claude is not giving me the kind of answer that I want, tell it. It doesn't have an ego. It's not going to ruin a relationship. I just say, listen, that's not what I'm asking for. Or what are you even doing right now? Hey, pay attention. Like, try this again. Make sure you are firm with it. All you want to do is get to the right answer, and Claude can help you do that. So when people say you have to prompt in a certain way, frame it up in a certain way, tips, tricks, forget all that. I'm not wasting my time with that. I'm saying, hey, this is what I need. It's not just getting an answer that sounds great or looks right. It is cracking this thing open. This is where we actually get real quality answers. Don't be fooled by something that looks like quality. We can keep on going deeper and deeper and deeper. That's the power of chain of thought. You can do it fast, and you can keep on getting to better quality answers, making sure that you remain the quality control element. Here are some additional prompts to catch AI mistakes before it hits your boss's desk. Which of these cited sources may be out of date or less relevant? Answer only if you're more than 75% confident. Cite sources and say uncertain if you're unsure. Where are you guessing versus actually knowing? What should I verify before trusting this? What could be wrong with this answer?
We've been living with AI for years. It just didn't show up the way we were all expecting. Let me tell you a surprising story. So if I say the Jetsons, you probably have some sense of what I'm talking about, even if you've never seen the show.
Meet George Jetson.
The Jetsons was actually a family workplace sitcom, and the idea was average American family, but set in the distant future. There was Rosie the robot. She was the maid who literally looked like a maid. The father had his briefcase. He got into his car. He went to the office with his cup of coffee and had a secretary once he got there. So what's really, really interesting about the Jetsons is that the Jetsons in the 1960s was contemplating this farther future where all of these changes might happen. But in reality, it was exactly like the present day. The mom stayed at home, the dad went to work, they had 2 kids, they had a maid, they had a car. And the only really huge difference was that it was in space. And the car, instead of driving on the ground, it flew in the air. The Jetsons represents a common problem that we all struggle with, and it is called the paradox of the present. Basically, when we think about the future, sometimes it's really challenging for us to imagine a world that is very, very different from the world that we live in today. The problem with the paradox of the present is that it sets some unnecessary constraints. We are sort of trying to take what we know, what we can experience, and just play that forward in a way that doesn't represent true change. So let's imagine for a moment that you're able to get into a time machine and you go back to 1962, 1963, when the Jetsons was made. You are a person from that future that they imagined being dumped into the distant past. It would feel nostalgic. You would notice cute differences, but you wouldn't be in a situation where your brain literally warped and melted, right? You would be able to comprehend that world. Now, take that fictional family, the Jetsons, and let's teleport them into the present year. There is no way that they would be able to comprehend the world that we currently live in. We have information that's digital, that flows freely, that you can access anywhere at any time. From a computer that's not the size of a room, but you could literally fit into your pocket, right? Our world has so many profound differences that just did not evolve in the way that people in the 1960s might have thought, that it would be incomprehensible for those people. And that's, that's the paradox of the present. It's easier for us to go back in time because we're already familiar with what happened than to go into the future and be able to imagine things that really are very different from the way they exist today. If you think about artificial intelligence, one of the biggest problems we all have is that we've been living with the idea of artificial intelligence now for a really long time, and that's because of incredible books and movies where the stories, the speculative stories of AI have been told over and over and over again. Whether that was a glowing red light and disembodied voice in 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Or a operating system that sounded like Scarlett Johansson and was almost like a companion.
Samantha?
Hi, sweetheart.
We've been living with these ideas, so our expectations for the future is that that's the way AI will show up. We just don't recognize it because it didn't show up in a way that we were all expecting. The navigation systems in your cars, the recommendation systems in your Spotify or your Netflix, the calculator itself that you're using on your mobile phones, all of these include bits and pieces in some form of AI. So we've already been living with it, but it's hard to see that development because we are shackled by the paradox of the present.
People are afraid of this technology. In lieu of it disappearing, the other option is to embrace it and to learn from it and to get ahead of it. People were afraid of photography when it first came out. The headline said, "Art is done." No one's going to look at a painting. But it inspired the Impressionist. An entirely new style of painting came to be because they decided to create art that couldn't be done by a camera. We have to embrace it and learn how to use it, and maybe think about how each of us might be the Impressionist. What's coming? What could be created? We're going to find new ways to do things. We're humans, we are creative, and we'll find the space where we can be unique and do things and see things that haven't been seen before, like the Impressionist.
So we're starting to see a big cultural shift in organizations all around the world from know-it-all cultures to learn-it-all cultures. Up until recently, I think we had workplace cultures where it was almost dangerous to admit what you didn't know. Finally, there's starting to be a shift, a mindset shift, and those who are experiencing success are the ones who are leaning in with curiosity. This is a complicated technology. In fact, artificial intelligence is not a technology. It's an umbrella term for a ton of different technologies. It's complicated. If you go back 5 years, nobody was expected to be an expert in AI, and suddenly now, if you're the leader of a company, not only are you supposed to be an exceptional leader, somehow you're supposed to be this overnight expert at a PhD level in something as challenging and complex is artificial intelligence. So I think if we take a step back and are willing to lean in to this moment of challenge and change by asking questions, we're all going to be a lot better off.
Where the internet put all of human knowledge online, AI is putting all of human knowledge at your fingertips. And so because of that, knowledge is a commodity. Facts are a commodity. And with that, it's affecting education. It's affecting how people are evaluated. Your degree will be used as a filter, but it will not get you the role. Because going forward, it's what have you built? What have you done? And how can you show up to add value? The key for people is to amplify who you really are, understand what your unique point of view is, and amplify that. Second is to really double down on developing your human skills, the ones that allow you to collaborate, to create, to lead and engage with other people so that you can solve problems together. The third thing is you have to understand that your personal value and your ability to adjust to this time period has everything to do with your ALIC, adaptability, learning, ideation, and change. That's the way to think about skills and abilities today.
Biologically, we are wired against change, meaning our brains use less energy when we just kind of go about our normal routine and we don't have to worry about doing anything differently. There is a little bit of a biological imperative for you to not make any changes, for you to not really think about the future and just kind of go along and let things happen. That's one pathway. You can certainly take that, but it may not be the best one for you going forward, given the amount of change that we're all living through today. So if what I've been talking about feels a little challenging, that's okay. But adopting a different mindset, thinking about the future differently, and leaning into uncertainty with curiosity really is the best path forward.
I hope you walk away with the knowledge and confidence that you already have everything you need. Can you see how working with large language models, generative AI, it's just like talking to a person? There's not something to learn in that traditional way. You already have this. So what's the big difference between people who are just getting started, beginners, and power users like me and you? It is a behavior shift. It is getting used to these tools. It is just using them every day. Try them for everything. At work, at home, it almost doesn't matter. The most important thing is usage. Just like you get used to a new colleague, you understand their strengths, weaknesses, what you would use them for, maybe where they fall down a little bit. Large language models are very similar. The more you use them, the more you're going to understand that, and the more fluent you're going to be. Sometimes it can feel like everyone is ahead, everyone is using AI all around you. It's understandable. We are all concerned about our jobs. If you're a college graduate, you're thinking, what am I going to do? If you're a mid-career professional, you're thinking, how am I going to keep up with the AI revolution? I am here to tell you that you, watching this course right now, are ahead of the curve. I talk to over 100,000 people every year. Most people are behind. That's not you. If you are using AI multiple times a day to solve problems, to help others solve problems, you are way ahead of the curve. Now, how do you want to stay there? How are you going to use it in a way that's going to benefit you, your team, and ultimately your company? The most important thing is not just using it for yourself. It's how you're going to use AI to elevate those around you. That's who get recognized.
What I most want you to walk away from this class with is, one, I want you to be inspired. Two, I want you to understand that you have agency. And three, I want you to get ambitious, not just for yourself, but for humanity. These tools are extraordinary, and we can use them to solve our most urgent and pressing problems. But we have to build what we want.
I want to leave you off with a challenge. As soon as this course is over, I want you with one of these large language models open on your desktop all the time, on your laptop all the time. I want the app on your phone. I want you to get used to talking into it. The most important thing is just getting accustomed to using it and just making sure that you feel comfortable. That can be a work project, it can be a home project, it can be anything that helps you build that trust with the large language model that helps you getting yourself using it over and over and over again.
You can now use these newfound skills in your daily work, and regardless of what happens with AI, you have just figured out a way to make yourself absolutely indispensable. If you're the person in your organization who knows how to think about the future, then it doesn't matter what happens with AI, or how your company uses it or doesn't use it, or what happens with the job market, because you're going to be the one who knows how to think about, how to research, how to plan for, how to prepare for the future in whatever way it might show up.